it is. 10,000 miles. Time really does fly when you're driving the best daily in the world. Best daily. I made that statement back when I first got the car after about 1,000 miles. And yeah, I would say that that statement still holds up. In my 1,000 mile review, I mainly just talked about the car, exterior, interior, just initial impressions. There's not too much to talk about after only 1,000 miles. However, it's been over a year and 10,000 miles, so I definitely have a lot more to talk about. My name is Jeremiah, and let's get into it. First up, if you don't already know, I own a 2022 Tesla Model 3 Performance. So it has the Ryzen chip, the CCS support, the ultrasonic sensors, pretty much everything that the new 2023 Model 3 has. Tesla kinda stopped making the small updates that we'd see every few months at the end of 2022, which I mean, isn't too surprising considering that we know that the big refresh, otherwise known as Project Highland, is right around the corner. Now, I opted for black exterior and white interior. I did not buy full self-driving, though I get it kind of for free, which we'll talk about later on. Also, black paint, so yes, I have PPF, which we will also discuss whether I think it's been worth it or not, along with how those white seats have held up. I was debating for a while on how to structure this review, and I kind of landed on just talking about specific aspects of the car that I would have wanted to have heard back when I was first purchasing. So yeah, chapters down below to skip around to different sections. Driving. I feel like starting off with the main purpose of owning a vehicle is pretty reasonable. The driving experience is fantastic. Anytime that I drive another car that isn't a Tesla or at least electric, I kind of just hate it, at least for daily driving that is. For spirited driving, it's a different story. One pedal driving is a pretty popular thing to talk about, as it seems so weird when you hear that you can drive without ever touching the brakes. But what's even weirder is once you get used to it and you try to go back. Tesla has done such a good job with one pedal driving that you will hate being in a car that doesn't have it, or at least I do. Anytime that I'm driving the other car in our household, which is a Corolla, I, for the first like 2 miles, forget to touch the brakes. Like I'll just keep going. I'm like, oh yeah, I actually got to use these things. Now, of course, another big difference is there's no changing of gears. It's just a smooth and continuous driving experience. It just feels how daily driving should be. Everything else now just feels like it's clunking around. It's kind of like going from 30 or 60 FPS on like your computer screen or something like that to 144 or like high frames, right? It's a weird analogy, but if you know what I'm talking about, then you know. You don't have to wait for anything to spool up or shift, and it's just so nice. Now, I can't talk about the driving without mentioning the acceleration, and well, no surprise, it's insane. Now, how insane will of course depend on which trim you have, but even the slowest Model 3 is faster to 60 than like 90% of cars on the road. I was pretty addicted to the acceleration for the first few months, and while I'm pretty used to it by now, I'm not bored of it. There's a big difference there. While I'm used to it, I'm not bored of it, which is something that I had heard would happen. Like, oh, yes, electric acceleration is cool, but you'll get used to it. And while I have gotten used to it, I've not gotten bored of it. I also want to mention that because of the acceleration and instant torque, it makes you feel safer on the road. It's weird to say, but the ability to insert yourself into anywhere on the road without trouble, it just makes you feel more in control, I guess you could say. And the last thing I'll say about driving is that zipping around town completely silent is just amazing. No one bats an eye at the fact that I just did 0 to 60 faster than a Hellcat. Also, big heavy battery in the bottom. Yeah, throwing this car into a corner and then exploding out of it, errands have just never been so fun. Even a year later, I still look forward to driving, and I'll still, while I don't do it as much as I used to, kind of find stupid errands to run here and there just to go drive. Cost. Now, prior to my Model 3, I was driving a Mustang that averaged 15 to 20 miles per gallon, with gas being around $3.50 as of late. I do 99% of my charging at home, where I am on a time of day electricity rate. So for 4 to 8 hours a day, electricity is more expensive, and for the rest of the day, it's cheaper, which is normally at night, and I have the car set to auto charge during my off-peak hours. I pay roughly 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Model 3 Performance having around an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's right under $5 to fully fully charge, which I'm not doing every day, but if I did, it would be pretty cheap. Now, the cost of getting a home charger installed will vary widely on a bunch of different factors. However, for me, getting a NEMA 1450 plug right next to my breaker was around $250. I drive roughly 800 miles a month, doing all my charging at home at $5 per full charge, car averaging 250 miles per full charge, so less than $20 a month. And it's actually less than that because a place I commute 40 miles round trip to 3 days a week has free charging that replenishes what I use round trip and then some. For supercharging, I have spent around $150 to $200 for the entire time I've owned the car, and 120 of that was on my 2,000 mile road trip that I posted here on the channel. Like I said, I do most of my charging at home. As for maintenance, to probably no one's surprise, it's zero. I haven't had to change the HVAC filters yet. I do the tire rotations myself because I'm not gonna pay someone $50 to do that. Maybe you could count my winter wheels, but I don't count those in maintenance. I do count those on the cost of the car. Now, I do put back some of the money I am saving on, all this maintenance and gas and all that stuff for new tires, as I know my somewhat lead foot will definitely cost me at least on my summer tires. Besides all that though, there's only 2 other things that actually cost me money. First is the premium connectivity. I want my satellite maps in Live Century View. That was $99 for the first year, but it is now free with referral credits, so I just re-upped with referral credits. And then registration/tax. I actually just got my renewal in for $713, though they have the car's value at $53,000, which I'm gonna be challenging to try to bring that down because the car definitely is not worth $53,000. That's literally what a new one's worth. However, even if you're not in a state that charges motor vehicle property tax, you're probably still going to be paying higher just because other states are now starting to introduce an electric vehicle tax. Texas now has a $200 just base tax, or maybe it's considered a fee or something like that, just for driving an EV. So yeah, registration, renewal, stuff like that, it's gonna be higher. After all the chaos, the pandemic, the shortages, the price cuts, Tesla stock is up over 100% year to date. Cybertruck shipments are a go. EVs are more affordable than ever. The economy seems to be on its way back. Everything's back on track. But we've seen this movie before, right? As soon as we get some bad news about interest rates or inflation, the markets will be right back to dumping on Tesla. I'm tired of all the whiplash, and that's why I'm finding assets that are less volatile, thanks to our sponsors at Masterworks. Guys, since we last spoke, Masterworks has extended their historic streak. Just weeks ago, they made their 15th straight profitable sale. This time, a Cecily Brown piece delivered a 77% net annualized return to investors. See important disclosures at masterworks.art/CD. And as with any investment, past returns may not be indicative of Masterworks paintings not yet sold, and past performance is not indicative of future results. Now, if you weren't one of the lucky ones to be included, don't fret. And if you didn't see the headlines, now's the time to pay attention. Masterworks just launched their biggest offering yet, a $36 million Basquiat piece. Some paintings have sold out within minutes, so you don't want to miss this. You can take advantage and skip the line today. Just click the link in the description. Exterior. I still think the Model 3 is a very good looking sedan. It doesn't scream EV like some EVs do, but it also doesn't look boring. Or at least not to me, because where I live, there aren't that many. How has it held up though? Great. I haven't had any issues since those initial few rattles I mentioned in my 1,000 mile review video. I did swap the stock Uber turbine wheels out a few months after I got the car because of winter. However, I have since switched back. And while the Ubers get a lot of hate online for being uncomfortable, easy to curb, thin sidewall, I personally am a big fan of them. I find them to be very similar in terms of comfort to my Arrows and my long range, and curbing them, well, people just can't park because I haven't curbed mine and I park next to curbs all the time. Paint quality, while it hasn't gotten any better, also hasn't gotten any worse. I hand wash it every month or so the paint still looks new. If you're curious on what I do to achieve this look, I'll have the video linked below. Now, I mentioned PPF earlier, and it really does make washing and maintaining the car much easier, thus saving me a pretty good chunk of time. PPF is also the reason why I have essentially zero rock chips. I got a full frontal along with rockers, so all of the high impact areas. It's XPEL Ultimate, and I paid around $1,500 to $2,000 for it. Between the time it saves me washing it and the fact that the car's paint still looks new, I'd say it was worth it, for me at least. It even protected against a massive rock impact that would have probably destroyed my paint. The film did tear, but the paint underneath is all good. Interior. This is definitely my favorite part about the car, and I mean, I guess that's a good thing considering that's where, you spend all the time when you're with the car, but it's my favorite part about the car for multiple reasons. First, it's minimalistic, and I'm a big fan of minimalism. I was never sad or annoyed about losing physical buttons versus the touch screen. I honestly didn't care and still don't. Most things in the car are a set it once and never touch it again. Secondly, the visibility out of the car is insane. Between the windshield being massive, the front being so low, and you just being surrounded by glass, it just feels like you can see everything. And while this isn't technically visibility, the fact that I can ride around with my rear and side repeater cameras up, I mean, it just feels like I'm cheating. Within less than a second, I can have full awareness of everything that's around the car. If I don't need to have my maps up to see where I need to take a turn, then I have these cameras up, like the rear view and the side repeaters. And even then, if I'm on a long stretch of highway and I don't get off for a little bit, I'll pull the cameras up because there's nothing else on the screen that I value more than just being aware of what's around the car. Third, the sound system. It just doesn't have any business being as good as it is. Anytime that I have someone in the car with music playing, they always compliment how good it sounds. I've even had multiple people where I'll show them all the cool things that the car can do, and then I'll turn up the sound system and they'll be like, this is literally the best thing about the car. Now, for people wondering how the white seats have held up, well, I did throw on some vegan leather or vinyl protector when I first got the car. I applied it day one and then proceeded to neglect the seats for an entire year. I've wiped them down probably 2 times, and as you can see, they still look new. Now, the driver's seat does have some dye transfer, but it's not from blue jeans, it's from black athletic shorts and joggers, and it's very, very minimal. You can't tell it's there unless you're a few inches from the seat, eyes to the seat, and you pull the seat and then you can kind of see the line where it's the actual white and then the slight dye transfer. This might have been somewhat preventable had I just not neglected the seats as hard as I did. But from what I've seen online and on forums, it doesn't really matter what you do. You're going to get some form of dye transfer. It's just how much depends on if you coated the seats and how often you clean them. Also, my driver's seat did end up developing stretch marks due to the way I sit. My left cheek being slightly up on the edge and my right one being more toward the center. I'm 6'1", 190, so it's not a weight problem. I have seen people say that it's a defect with the seats and that Tesla will replace them. That didn't work for me. They claim the stretch marks were normal. And if you want my honest opinion, I think it is a defect. I think it's just such a widespread defect that they're just calling it normal now. Also have seen posts where people have claimed it's dirt or dye transfer around the actual stretches, which makes them visible and you just need to clean them. I have used every non-abrasive cleaner, APC, horsehair brushes to no avail. Thankfully, just like the dye transfer, you can't really see the stretch marks unless you're literally this close to them, so it's not really that big of a deal. It's pretty well known that Tesla's seats hold up very well, and I can definitely confirm that. Also, the seats, as you might have heard, are very comfortable, though I do feel like some people exaggerate their comfort, as it doesn't matter how soft or how much support something has, if you sit in it for long enough, you're gonna start to experience some discomfort. Humans just aren't meant to sit for long periods. And I actually have a theory about why people say that Tesla seats just in general are so comfortable. On road trips, where you would normally experience some discomfort after a while, what are you doing every hour and a half to 2 hours? You're stopping, charging, getting out, and moving around. So in my opinion, most people are just getting out and moving around before the seats actually become uncomfortable. Also want to mention the storage space, and while it's not a Model Y, so the storage space normally isn't a reason for purchasing, it still has really good storage space, especially for a sedan. A good sized trunk with seats that fold, a sub trunk, and a front trunk. It's no Model Y or big SUV, but like I said, for a sedan, it's got pretty good storage. Now, I was recently in a refreshed Model S that had the cooled seats. Yeah, I wish I had that. I've also been in some newer cars with ambient lighting at night. Also wish I had that. However, I guess you can't classify those as complaints because it's not like something's wrong with what the car currently has. It's more of a, I just wish that my car had these features. The only genuine thing that I didn't like about the interior was the screen being stationary, and I didn't know how much I didn't like it until I got a rotating screen mount. It makes a world of difference. Anytime that I'm in another Model 3 or Y that has a stationary screen and I'm driving, it's awful. The phone app. I didn't know whether to make this its own section or throw it in somewhere else, but whatever, I'll keep this part short. While the phone app is nice, being able to fully control the car, like rolling up the windows, adjusting charge limit, checking Sentry cameras, the one feature that I use daily and that I could not live without is preconditioning. I don't think I've ever gotten in this car and been uncomfortable while the HVAC gets up and going. I think we've all been in a car like that where you get in, maybe it's a hot day, the seats are on fire, and you're uncomfortable for like a minute or two until the system gets up and running. That's just never been the case with this car. Even if it's 100+ degrees, like in the cabin and I'm walking out the front of a store, all it takes is a minute or less and it's good to go. Like by the time I actually walk to the car is preconditioned. It might not be, all the way down to like 70 degrees, but at least it's not 100+ degrees. Plus it's electric, so even if you park in a garage at home, you can precondition with the door closed. The phone app is great. Preconditioning though is amazing. Charging, definitely something you'll be doing a lot of, but not in like a negative way. One of the things that I love the most is waking up every morning to a full charge. Having to stop and fill up is so inconvenient, and you don't really realize how inconvenient it really is until you stop doing it. Now, for the first 6 months that I owned the car, all of my charging was done via the mobile connector and a 110 adapter that came with the car. This is known as trickle charging and will get you 3 to 5 miles per hour. So 8 hours or overnight, you're looking at anywhere between 25 to 40 miles. It's also the least efficient in terms of power from the wall that makes it to your car, and if it's really cold, the car might not even charge at all. And this worked just fine for me as I drove less than 40 miles a day. However, I have since upgraded to a 1450 with the mobile connector pulling 32 amps, so roughly 30 miles per hour. Doesn't matter if I come home with 0% at midnight and gotta be on the road at 8 a.m. or making last minute road trips, I know I'll be charged up. And it has been great. I don't have to think about it. I just plug in. Now, what about charging at superchargers? And well, what do you want me to say? It's the supercharger network. They always work. They're kind of everywhere now. I just plug in and everything is automatic. Also, almost all the superchargers around me and that I have personally visited have been 250s. So I can pull up at like 2 to 3% and be back up to 60 to 70 in the time that it takes me to get out, plug in, use the bathroom, and get a drink or snack. It's at a point now to where if I'm going to get food while I'm charging, like it's gotta be like fast food. And I don't just mean actually just, fast food restaurants, but like I've got to get the food fast and get it eaten fast. We're kind of at a point now to where sit down restaurants are just out of the question. I tried doing it once and I had to go move the car by the time the appetizer was coming out. My only real complaint with supercharging is when Tesla adds 250s to a already pre-existing 150 site and doesn't label them. So like half will be 150s and the other will be 250s, but the in-car nav will just say that they're all 250s. Yes, you could just sit and see where you peak at, but if you're plugging in and immediately going somewhere like to get food or something, it can be kind of annoying. Can you tell this exact scenario happened to me and I ended up wasting a ton of time? Charging is something that I've got used to pretty fast, and it's been more convenient, like charging at home, than inconvenient, like waiting at superchargers. Though the opposite could very well be true for you if your only form of charging is supercharging, but I'm still in the boat that if you don't have home charging or like free charging at work, then you just shouldn't own an EV right now. Degradation and efficiency. I have tracked this car with Teslafy since day one, like had it all set up before I even pulled out from the delivery center, so I have pretty much all the data. The average efficiency pulled straight from the car is right around 280 watt hours per mile. My car's rated efficiency is around 220, so I'm averaging roughly 80%. I do a decent mix of highway driving, maybe going a little fast, and normal city driving and like country back road driving with a little bit of a lead foot at stoplights and coming out of a corner. This also includes the winter where I swapped my bigger, heavier, but more aerodynamic 20-inch Uber turbines for smaller, lighter, but less aerodynamic 18-inch winter wheels that were wrapped with Cross Climate 2s. I averaged high 280s with this setup, and I averaged mid 260s with my Ubers in the summer for comparison. I have thought about saying screw it and just becoming a hypermile freak, as I have done some drives where I actually tried to be efficient, and I'll start averaging low 200s to high 100s. But the car's just too fun to drive, and I didn't buy a performance to drive efficiently. Despite that though, the car still has been pretty efficient. For degradation, well, it's been pretty good all things considered. I'm at about 5 to 6% according to Teslafy. However, even if my degradation was at 10+%, I still wouldn't care. As long as I can get a few hundred miles on a charge up pretty quickly on a road trip, I could care less about degradation. I just drive hard and plug in. Though I have not done a service mode battery degradation test yet, which is more accurate. I plan to do one in the future though. Autopilot. Basic autopilot, which comes free with every Tesla, is just cruise control that keeps you centered in your lane, slowing down and speeding up depending on traffic. It's really a game changer if you're coming from a car that doesn't have something similar for long road trips. Now, there are two other higher tier versions of autopilot which are not free. Enhanced autopilot and full self-driving. EAP is $6,000 and FSD is $15,000. I did not opt for either when I purchased the car, and I'm very glad I didn't. The only feature that is actually nice is the auto lane change, which is included in the cheaper $6,000 enhanced autopilot package, but that's still $6,000 to change lanes for you. As for the $15,000 FSD, yeah, that's a scam. The biggest feature that the $15,000 FSD has is FSD beta. By the way, the naming is awful. Half of normal autopilot is technically in beta, and you can buy FSD but not be in or have FSD beta. It's just a naming nightmare. When I say FSD beta, I mean like the top tier one, the one that you see on the news, the one that can drive you, on city streets, do turns, roundabouts, and can theoretically take you from point A to B all on its own. But that's the biggest problem right there, theoretically, because it actually can't do that. Or I should say it can't do it consistently. 2 years ago, I said beta was like a 16-year-old with a permit, and well, I need to amend that now. It is, I would say, a fully licensed driver in some areas, but still 16 and a permit in other areas. Sometimes it'll do something that's pretty complex, like an unprotected turn across 4 lanes of traffic, and it'll do it flawlessly. And you'll be like, oh my God, like we are living in the future. And then it'll pull up to a roundabout and just sit there, and it won't move at all. And no one's coming, and it just sits there. Now, one thing that is really nice though is FSD beta on the highway. I don't see enough people talking about this, and it's essentially just a better autopilot to a point to where if they called it Autopilot 2.0, I would totally believe it. If you're unaware on how like Tesla's software works, to keep it really simple, there used to be 2 different versions of software. There was normal software and FSD beta software. About 6 months ago, these 2 softwares merged, kinda. And beforehand, if you were on the beta software and you got on the highway, your car would essentially revert back to the normal software. And now there's its own software for the highway on beta, and that's like the new and improved autopilot that I'm talking about. And when I say it's a better autopilot, like I mean it's much better. The car's awareness to other traffic and reactions are better. It nudges over in the lane for bigger trucks, smoother lane changes. It gets you in the correct lane sooner and takes exits better. At this point, I hope FSD beta on city streets eventually works and gets really good, and that becomes the main selling point, so they can just implement all the changes from FSD beta on the highway to normal autopilot, because it is that good. Now, with all that being said, I do have FSD beta. However, I didn't pay for it. I'm just using referral credits from Tesla's referral program to get FSD. And despite me saying it's not worth $15,000 and it's a 16-year-old with a permit in some areas, it's still pretty good. The commute I do 3 days a week, beta can kind of do it flawlessly. Sometimes I'm tired, don't want to drive, so I just monitor the car, which takes a lot less energy. Still wouldn't pay $15,000 for it though. Complaints. I wanted to include this section simply because I feel like that I've only been talking good about the car, but in reality, I just don't have any issues per se, but I can complain about some things. The phone key can sometimes be weird, and I have to open the app for my car to unlock that, and when it's raining and it does that, it's super annoying. No automated front trunk is super lame to me. I just washed the car, and I paid 50 grand for the car, and now it has handprints on the hood because it has a manual front trunk. Wind noise is still kind of annoying at high speeds, even with the double pane glass. While they have gotten a lot better, the music apps are still pretty buggy, like just not playing music when you first get in the car. The gray headliner looks ugly and out of place. I don't know why Tesla just doesn't put Alcantara up there. They already do it in the S and the X. It's not even a premium looking thing. It just doesn't look ugly. Like, I don't see Alcantara and think, oh, that's premium. But when I see the gray headliner, I just think it's ugly. Like, I don't know. But besides those and the few issues that I mentioned earlier, the car has been fantastic. I really think it's the best daily driver. Cheap to operate, extremely safe, versatile with its all-wheel drive, fast, pretty much everything you could want in a daily driver. Like, you're not really making any compromises except maybe like not hearing the sound of an engine. But those are my thoughts after 10,000 miles. I'll get back on here at the 25 to 50,000 mile mark to update you all. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more Tesla related content like it, then feel free to subscribe. I upload pretty much every week. If you have any questions, drop them down below and I'll get back to you. And I will see you all in the next one.